So I want to thank David again for joining us. We have a lot to learn to build communication consistency and team in Balboa Park, and we're taking a number of steps to do so. And building from his presentation, we'd like to continue that conversation on guest experience and the work we've done here in the park. Interactions with visitors in the park revealed that 1, they perceive the park as a whole and not as individual organizations, and 2, that there are some visitors who never even enter a single institution, but visit the park nonetheless. So how do we impact the experiences of these potential visitors and create a cohesive Balboa Park experience? If you joined us for the Smith Leadership Symposium in 2010, you heard about our first transformative collaborative learning project in which we collected more than 10,000 surveys from 12 Balboa Park organizations to learn more about visitor motivations. And you've probably seen this slide before. Results showed the high correlation between experiences of basic comfort and benefits related to meaning making. Aligning with our 2012 symposium keynote, Chip Conley, and his adaptation of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which shows the basic needs of comfort and safety that must be satisfied before visitors can find meaning and learn, creating that deeper engagement. So just focusing on those physical needs, the tier 1 benefits, creates satisfaction, not loyalty. So in 2013, we embarked on our second collaborative learning project focused on establishing a consistent visitor experience that not only met visitors' physical needs by creating a more knowledgeable park staff, but would also generate an audience committed to our organizations and the park, becoming advocates for the work that we do. So we brought together 33 participants from 17 organizations to explore customer service in the park. Over the course of 8 months, 20 sessions, and up to 75 hours per participant, we did a number of things. And actually, I just want to take one quick moment to thank those of you that are here today. From our 33 participants, we had 19 that really continued the work the full 8 months. And some of them are in the audience today. And they were rock stars for the work that they did. So what did we do? We reviewed the current literature, ideas, best practices of customer service that include looking at John Falk, Chip Conley, Judy Rand, Stephanie Weaver. We defined and unpacked the term customer service and explored alternatives, guest experience, and we ultimately renamed what we were calling our professional development experience to focus more on the term guest rather than customer. We heard from experts in the field to help guide our work. We explored design thinking, the hospitality industry, park experts, and even an improv instructor. We identified and defined shared Balboa Park values for excellence in customer service, and I'll share more about those later. And we articulated what is special and unique about the Balboa Park experience, using behind-the-scenes tours, interacting with guests, empathy interviews with design thinking, and we built a learning community around our collaborative work. We enhanced collaboration, communication, and problem-solving skills, with the end result to create, sorry, I got ahead of myself there. The end result to create a park-wide training program around orientation and wayfinding and customer service skills that would give visitors an exceptional and consistent customer service experience throughout the park. So one of our teams created an orientation prototype, and this would not only increase employee knowledge about the park and confidence to better serve visitors, but can provide a social network promoting a further sense of belonging in the park that can deepen engagement and impact job satisfaction. So organizations will enhance their service delivery through a commitment to professional development, resulting in less turnover and a more skilled workforce. All the organizations stand to benefit by promoting the Balboa Park experience and being advocates for the diversity of experiences available within the park. Our second team created a customer service skills training module that was built around core values that were developed throughout the process. Be engaging, which included seeking to touch the lives of each of our guests by awakening their curiosity, inspiring them in as many ways as possible. Be responsive, taking individual responsibility for meeting the needs of guests by solving problems and acting with warmth, sincerity, and respect, ever mindful of the diverse perspectives of each and every guest. Being innovative, committed to continuous improvement, and accepting individual responsibility for taking actions and or making recommendations that incorporate new ideas, including evolving thought leadership, sustainability, and technology. And finally, becoming knowledgeable, which is where the orientation really fit in, seeking to provide information and facilitate understanding for all of our guests so they may deepen their appreciation of Balboa Park and the world around them. And I'm going to share more about what we're doing with the orientation and the customer service skills module. But first, I wanted to bring up a couple panelists to join me on the stage to share their experience with the program. Alex Roller is the Productions and Operations Manager for the San Diego Youth Symphony and Conservatory, and Marisa Espinosa is the Operations Assistant from the Japanese Friendship Garden Society of San Diego. And we did have a panelist who was listed in the program who was unable to join us because she was sick. And make sure you the button on the side. And so I've asked them to join us today to share a little bit more about their experience and to share how the project impacted them individually in terms of their professional development, as well as changes that may have impacted their organization. Marisa will start for us.
Well, on an individual level, I think the program had the, can you hear me? Yeah, good. In terms of building a community in the park, I think over the course of the 8 months, was it, Amanda? I think a lot of us came to see ourselves more as park staff as opposed to just staff of our individual institutions. I know I met a lot of people through that process and have come to call on them or see them as a resource that I can use for anything, including the guest experience. I think we all developed an understanding of sort of how the visitor perceives the park, and that really a lot of our visitors come to Balboa Park. They don't come to our individual institutions necessarily. They visit us once they're here. And so we really need to work together, as David Rosenberg mentioned, to create this amazing guest experience. At an organizational level, I think it's this really tied in well to sort of the general trend in the museum world that I know we're all aware of, to really focus on the visitor experience and not just doing things that we want to do, but really things that are going to be effective for visitors. At the Japanese Friendship Garden where I work, it's been a work in progress, but we've started to do a lot of things to really think about the visitor and kind of how they're experiencing our institution. We've made our visitor brochure more user-friendly. We've added benches. We had several docents prior to this, but we're starting to bring in a whole docent training program that was new and kind of having the consistent message that David Rosenberg talked about as well.
Thanks, Marisa. So it was a very informative and wonderful experience. I had just started at the San Diego Youth Symphony and Conservatory when I was asked to join this collaborative. It just started, I think, even just 3 months after I started working at SDYS. And so for me, it was a great way to get oriented to the park. As somebody who had been, at that time, a resident of San Diego for 10 or 11 years, I had been to the park, but not nearly as much as I should have. And so it's a great way to learn more about the park, to kind of understand the breadth of the institutions that are here. But then it was also a really great opportunity for me to learn how to network and ways to network among other institutions and staff people within the park. And organizationally, we don't have a brick and mortar institution here in the park. We, along with a couple of other youth arts organizations, are in the Casa del Prado, which is across the street from here. And we have our offices there, and we utilize the classrooms, but so do a whole lot of other people use those classrooms in that space. And so we have our rehearsals every weekend. We're here from 8:30 in the morning till 7:30 at night on Saturdays and 11 to 5 on Sundays. And all of our rehearsals are open to the public. So we, myself along with one of my staff members that participated in the collaborative, began to look at how we engage even the visitors that are just wandering through the park, that hear music coming from somewhere, find their way up the stairs to our rehearsals, how we engage them in their experience with us. And we began by changing some of our signage to make it more accessible and welcoming and informational. We get a lot of questions there when people are wandering around the park. They come to hear the rehearsals, and then they want to know, oh, well, where is the Museum of Man, or what's going on at MOPA, or any of these kind of things. So we realized we need to be even though we are San Diego Youth Symphony staff, we need to be knowledgeable about the events that are going on in the park as well, so we can better assist visitors to the park on their experience. And it began for us as we began to process kind of what we were learning through what it means to have a positive guest experience, things like that, that while we may not have an institution that people can access 7 days a week, our concerts that we put on in concert venues all across San Diego County, those are kind of our institutions that people come and visit. So how do we create a positive guest experience for parents of our students, for patrons and donors, as well as general public who come to hear our concerts? How do we maximize those moments at those concerts to engage those people who come to visit? And then even as we've continued to grow in collaboration, as we approach as part of the 2015 celebration, SDYS, the San Diego Civic Youth Ballet, San Diego Junior Theater, and San Diego Civic Dance Arts, we are all celebrating our 70th or around their anniversaries. And so we are collaborating on a joint youth and arts exhibit that we are creating and developing to showcase our histories together that will be in the Casa del Prado Theater here in the park. And so it taught us a lot about what it means to collaborate, and even as we went through some of the Stephanie Weaver exercises and things like that, how do we want to design our exhibit in such a way that it's engaging to guests and patrons as they come. So it was kind of a whole breadth of things that for me, both personally and organizationally, it was very impactful as well.
And so moving forward on a park-wide level, what are the components of the learning project that you felt would need to be included on a park-wide level for training?
I think for me, one of the things that we talked about and did regularly was getting feedback from visitors. So again, the idea that we're creating this visitor guest experience and we're not just implementing exhibits or programs that we think will work, but really that we've gotten feedback on from visitors that will work. And I think we did that in several instances during the initiative, but specifically Stephanie Weaver's Experienceology. Basically, it was a worksheet that we did. We did it in pairs. I worked with Heather here to visit the Natural History Museum, in fact. And what we did is kind of went through different institutions that were not our own and experienced it as a visitor would. Everything from signage outside to their admissions desk, to signage throughout the institution. And so really, thinking like a visitor as well as getting feedback from visitors. As you all saw in the images, and I know Alex will talk a little bit about, we actually went out and talked to visitors and experimented with things to kind of see how it might work inside of an institution.
Yeah, so one of the most impactful components for me was 2 days that we spent in a workshop called Design Thinking, and really went through how you, from the very beginning, start to design an exhibit or a guest interaction. And we did two things that were a component of that I think is critical for how we develop customer service, guest experience skills as a park-wide staff. And one was, the first thing we went out, we did empathy interviews. And that's where we just engaged people and kind of wondering why they come to the park. And as Amanda mentioned earlier, we discovered a lot of people come to the park just to use the park, not to ever go in one of the museums. But then also talked about the whole idea of prototyping. And if you're going to design an experience, design a quick prototype, as Marcia referenced. And so we did. We designed an experience and we built a prototype, and we went out and we invited random strangers to sit in this makeshift car or interact with the group that I was in, we had a makeshift interactive kiosk. So there were three of us each facing different directions, and some of us were functioning as a computer screen, some of us were functioning as an actual human being, and ways to get feedback. And so again, as Marcia mentioned a lot this morning, that we discovered that listening is key. And so how do we train our employees across the park to really be listeners? And then the very first meeting that we had of the entire collaborative initiative was probably the most impactful for me. And it was a day of learning about the park. We had the opportunity to listen to a panel of people, including a woman named Betty Peabody, who I think probably has the single most concentrated knowledge and history of the park of anybody that is still around. And it was amazing just to listen to her and hear her tell the history of the park and some of these really amazing stories. And then we went on a tour with Ranger Kim to go around the park and learn kind of these unique little idiosyncrasies and really understand where things are in the park and how all of the institutions really function together. And to me, that experience allowed us to, especially somebody who's new to working in the park, understand that we really are one park. And as Marisa mentioned, that people do see us as one destination, not as all the myriad of institutions among the park, and how we can then engage as staff people of individual institutions, understanding that we are part of this much bigger, much more rich and beautiful location of the park. And so that was key for me in kind of how this all works together.
Thank you. And so, like David mentioned, you can't just tell people to be friendly and expect them to go out and provide excellent customer service. And so that's one of the things that we realized based on our evaluation and feedback from our participants, is that we could teach customer service skills, but without the passion and confidence and empowerment that we had established through this collaborative learning project, we wouldn't necessarily see results. That our team members in the park needed to embrace the Balboa Park experience and care about their impact on visitors, which would come from interacting with visitors. Therefore, the Parkwide trainings for new employees really needed to capture the spirit and energy of that 8-month collaborative in a much condensed time frame. So we're moving forward with the orientation as an experience that all new staff and volunteers would complete as Balboa Park team members. And, excuse me. So the orientation serves as a gateway. Oh, I'm ahead of myself again. Sorry. So the orientation would really serve as a gateway for all park team members, and we would need to create a platform to deliver that orientation. So we would couple that with an in-person guest experience training that would be derived from that 8-month experience, and that would together would form part of a onboarding program for the park. So we would create professional development tracks for various levels of staff. So, for example, a management staff that might include hiring for success or supervisory skills, a frontline track that might include those customer service skills and that improv workshop that we did. And we needed to think about the platform that we would use to deliver this. So we are currently exploring a learning management system that would allow all of our Balboa Park staff initially, and then eventually we would take it further, to really take control of your learning. You would have one place to access all program resources, and it would really help us streamline and focus our offerings through the Learning Institute. So we would have 4 components to the learning management system. One would be the online modules. So this would include the orientation, which would be facilitated through the, it would be an individual program that would be facilitated through the management system, as well as those HR mandated programs, customer service skills, supervisory skills, hiring for success. Those could all have potential to be delivered through the online modules. But we would also still offer in-person trainings and workshops, such as the guest experience training that we would couple with the orientation. And then additional tracks from the professional development tracks might include the improv or design thinking, those things that really need to be done in person. The third component would be webinars, and this is where we hope to kind of make the learner the instructor, kind of a new form of professional development, which would leverage our expertise here in the park and would allow us to partner with experts in the field on best practices. And then our fourth would be resources. So we're currently working on, as many of the executive directors in the office, in the room know, on a series that would allow our staff in the park to get to know who our leaders are here. And I do have some clips from that I would like to share. We did pull some pieces from various interviews, and this would just be a sampling of something that, the kind of content we would be able to provide for our park staff. You did.
It is sometimes difficult to get that first job in a museum, but once you're in the profession, it's very easy to move up into the profession and to change museums and work in other museums. It is just a great place, and I can't imagine, having spent 50 years in the museum profession, any other profession I would rather be associated with.
If you like learning, I mean, that's what museums are all about, both for the visitor and for the people that work there.
People in the museum industry are really special. They're very creative, innovative, and most importantly, they want to do good in the world. They want to make an impact.
In the museum field, we seek people who have a wide range of talents that can do many things. And so if you can do it, we'll use it.
It's hugely important to take initiative, not sit on your hands. Volunteer to take on new projects and get out of your comfort zone. I think that's, it's where you grow the most. Obviously, it's the most uncomfortable, but that's where you learn the most.
Whatever you do, if you're going to do it right, it's going to take practice, 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 patience, patience, patience. You also have to be willing to make a mistake and admit it. Do it. You will succeed.
Be passionate about what you do and be practical about how you get there. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is about. It is about being passionate about doing wonderful things, but being smart about what you need to do to be able to be successful in doing them.
Community engagement is really very important, and I think it has to be modeled from the top. It has to be led by the director and then built up across the entire institution.
We need to follow the Girl Scout rule of leaving this place better than we found it. But at the same time, we need to understand these assets, these treasures are not ours to play with. We hold them in trust for the future.
And we have the Balboa Park Learning Institute, where we can all learn and train together.
Okay, that last little segment, a little shameless plug. So those are pieces that we pulled from various interviews, and a number of them are responding to skills that they felt were important in the museum industry. And so that is where we can kind of capture some of that rich history that Alex was referencing from that panel. We can't have that panel every week for all of our staff in the park, but how these are ways that we can actually provide these resources in the future moving forward. So I know one of the questions that we will likely hear is a timeline for this this game plan, and I would like to tell you that it is ready to go, that we're launching it tomorrow. However, as all things, this is a process, and we're really focusing on the orientation right now and getting that up and running and making that available as the first thing that we can provide on the learning management system, along with those executive director videos and some of that resources, that free content. And so we're looking at probably late spring, summer to be able to really provide that for you. And so I wanted to kind of come back together and come back to what David said about the evolution of training and how it needs to be ongoing. And that is kind of what we're hoping to achieve with the learning management system, is to be able to provide these professional development tracks that allow staff in the park to move through the park and possibly jump organizations and really know that when you're hiring someone who came from another organization, that you all have that same baseline training. And we are incorporating programs such as our all-park events, the barbecue that's going to be in June, and the mix and match, if you haven't heard of that yet. Those are all under this umbrella of one park, one team. And that's something that all of our participants really came to embrace throughout the training. And through that, we really hope to further build our team in the park, open our lines of communication, and provide that consistency with customer service and the guest experience. And so with that, I would like to invite David to come back on stage if you'd like, just in case there are any final questions about guest experience in general, before we dismiss for lunch. All right. I know you're hungry.
Hi, David. Thank you so much for a great lecture, as well as all the other speakers today. I'm curious, the guest experience in terms of team building and fun activities that really have a greater purpose down the line. Is it more of a reactionary or precautionary measure? And with items that are so immeasurable, sometimes profit-wise, how do you establish like what that line is as a budget, if that makes sense?
I think I followed your question.
Okay,
So, what is the value of team building on an ongoing basis, and how do you make sure that that continues? Is that? Sure. So, I guess to start with, why are you doing team building exercises? We're doing it because we want the team to act coherently from start to finish and have that community amongst themselves, so that to feel part of a team. So I've always found team building exercises to be something that break down, again, barriers that happen between staff, and to really kind of set that framework where teams work together, get out of silos, and quite frankly, just communicate in a different environment. And that's the benefit of those team building exercises. As far as being for ongoing, I know some organizations that constantly have team building opportunities for their staff, and at some point it's also just have you reached that benefit? What's the goal in mind? Has it been reached, and how do you go a step further? It might be beyond team building. It might be saying, okay, now how do we as a team educate ourselves, or how do we as a team create a community experience that we've all done together, and that's building a team. So I guess I have a hard time with that question, because team building to me is a lot more than just having team building exercises. It's creating opportunities for that team to work together, to develop ideas together, and to create community experiences that ultimately they're working towards a longer goal in mind. And that may or may not require a budget, that may or may not require a lot of planning, but it does need to be something that's front of mind.
Hi, David. Quick question. Do you have any outside vendors who provide visitor-facing services for the museum, and how do you incorporate them into your overall guest experience training?
Good question. So our food and beverage and our gift and bookstores, our merchandising, we contract SSA, Service Systems Associates, out of Denver, and they provide the oversight for those two areas. Now, their general managers work as part of guest experience, and their staff are trained by the aquarium staff themselves as far as the interpretation and everything else that they do. In fact, their uniforms are the same uniforms. So we've really made a very conscious effort to say, your staff and our staff are all one, and everything we do is all done together. So even though they might get their paychecks from a different organization, that's where it stops. Everything else is still part of how we operate ourselves, and it's really worked well for us. It's been very, very successful, and we're just great partners in carrying that out. And that's the only place that we outsource at this point.
Great. Okay, so after lunch, we will actually be kind of shifting our focus and looking at a different type of audience, and that is the digital side of things. And Nick Honeysett will be leading us for the afternoon segment.